We are going to move on to something that, AI is real, it's here, but let's move on to something that is maybe for most of us a bit more tangible, as we're talking about issues that most designers in the room will run into, on a daily basis, namely those pesky topics of accessibility and having an effective design system. So we have with us here today Wendy, who has been working on these topics and who will share with us her take on that and how these things really go hand in hand. And once you do have them both properly in place, accessibility and design systems, how that can really rock your world as a designer and as a company at large. Let's hear it for Wendy Fox.
Check, check. Nice. I will give everyone a second to come in, come out, change your mind, and for me to grab some water. So, still some movement in the back, so we'll just stall for another second. So let's get started, I would say. So welcome to my talk. I hope my hair is not interfering too much with the audio, so just start waving frantically in case it gets muddy or hard to understand. Welcome to my talk on inaccessible design systems, doing things wrong to get it right. My name is Wendy Fox. I use the pronouns she, her. I feel like a bit of mandatory to do a little slide about myself. I'm usually not a big fan of giving the overview of my all my career path and all the stops I had. In general, I like to talk more about what I'm passionate about. So in the past, starting from applied linguistics, a lot of eye tracking, EEG studies, I was always very curious how communication works. I was then not really aware that this is closely connected to design and UX, but deep down, I was always really passionate about how do things work, how is it processed. So I started on the research side of things, looking into how subtitling is designed, how can we improve it. Went through an agency stage. I guess most of us went through that stage sooner or later, and ended up at GoTo, back then Logmein, where I worked both as a product designer and a UX researcher. So I was lucky enough to get to wear both of those hats, and worked in the early days of GoToMeeting and really digging into how do our users schedule and how do we build remote video conferencing tools to be fully accessible. So how did I end up leading our design system team? Our design system called Chameleon, it's been around for many years at this point, 5 or 6 years. In the beginning, it was not really what we call a design system. Maybe you know that, like you have a few libraries, a few collection of icons, way too many colors, but it's not a design system yet. And sooner or later, if you're lucky, you'll have a courageous product designer, not me in this case, actually starting to organize all these aspects and start thinking in a systems approach. And as I had some experience building up programs based on the accessibility research we did in 2019, I came on board to make what was then libraries and collection of things and a few passionate designers and engineers to actually approach it as a product by its own that needs management, that needs rituals. So this is why nowadays I lead our design system team. I act as the product manager, but I'm also the UX manager of our designers on the team. And as I said, based on the accessibility research we did, we realized it's not just having guidelines and requirements. We do need to also combine this with a grassroots approach of educating our fellow engineers, designers, researchers to really know how to build an accessible, inclusive product. I'm also very much in love with Australia as well, but Austria in this case, sorry. So you might see 1 or 2 shots from our extensive hikes and journeys through Austria's mountain ranges. And I'm pretty happy to be here. So thanks for being here. I know it's late. We've been around for almost 10 hours at this point. So I'm aware we're all struggling a bit. It's post-coffee, post-lunch. We're in this little happy food coma. So I'll try and take it slow. When I saw at what time we're doing the talk, I did simplify a bit, took some of the charts out, added some games in. So I hope we'll have a good time for the next hour or so. And you might see some pictures of our senior dog, Ole. I did use this presentation to sneak in some of them, so stay tuned. So, and as I promised, we'll try and be a bit more interactive and try to prevent you from falling in that food coma or go hunting for another coffee. So the idea is, you can see I'm already a bit exhausted, so I want to hear about you. How are you doing? You can jump onto menti.com, put in the code, and let me see with an emoji, are you still doing good? Do we need more coffee? Anyone napping that you want to out sitting next to you, maybe? So let's see how this is working. And I guess it's the first time someone is actually asking you, hey, please grab your phone. And you need to stop looking at me and look at your phone. So this is your chance. And there we go. Ha! I was a bit worried for a second because it's always this like hit or miss with interactive slides. Oh, I love the cake piece. Is there cake anywhere? Did I miss that? This is looking great. Thanks so much for joining. And yeah, let's keep going. If it will let me. There we go. Okie doke. You will hear me saying chameleon a few more times. Whenever I say chameleon, I'm referring to our internal design system. You see our team here. Where are the slides? We have 3 designers that are full-time on the team, and we have 4 engineers as well as a product owner supporting me on the more process-oriented side. And I could not stop from highlighting 2 colleagues. They're not in the full-time team, but we have our dedicated accessibility lead at GoTo that is working closely with us, keeping a close eye on anything we do, as well as engineers. One example here is Marie in the picture, that sometimes join our team to contribute, in this case, doing a full-scale accessibility audit of our components, and then go back into their original team. So usually it's like about 10 people that work full-time on our design system. I will not go into like the absolute nitty-gritty details of design systems, but I really love that quote from Nathan A. Curtis saying, a design system, and that is really what it defines and separates it from libraries or a design kit, is that it's a living funded product with a roadmap, a backlog, and serving an entire ecosystem. So looking at Chameleon, we have roughly 3 identifiers that make it an actual design system. We have the libraries, the part that is often mixed up with the design system, which is the foundations. In our case, there is a huge library of design tokens for any values, be it colors, spacing, motion design, that we store there and then use to build our components. We have about 50 web components based on Microsoft Fast, and we're looking into building a mobile implementation based on what we already have across the company. That wasn't me. The second identifier is that you have a dedicated and clearly defined user group. In our case, about 50 designers out of a 80 people UX team at GoTo, and about 50 engineering teams across 2 to 3 business units serving 10 distinct products. And then the heart, the piece that makes the difference is it's a dedicated team. So we have the rituals, we have the governance, we're on Jira, we have a Kanban board, we do refinements and replenishment. But then again, we also have the guidelines to help our users to apply Chameleon in the way that we recommend and see fit. So there's guidelines on accessibility, but also notification patterns, loading, communicating danger, anything that is a common challenge across our products. Similarly to the design systems, I will not do a really, really deep dive on what is accessibility. I like the statement from the Microsoft Inclusive Design Kit, where it just says accessibility is about making an experience open to all. And I think that should about be it, right? Just like do it, make sure everyone can use it, and we wish it was that simple. Sadly, it is not. One of our really main tools nowadays is to strive for accessibility and go to our accessibility champions. As I mentioned, we founded them as one of the direct results of our accessibility research, and it was really about having our hands-on individual contributors be able to not just be educated, but also spread and motivate that awareness, identify colleagues that might not be too confident or educated. So just send them a few resources, maybe even motivate them to get an onboarding to being a champion. We develop and maintain centralized knowledge, onboarding kits, educational things, or even just resources, recommendations, how to, like, which trainings are good. We try to ensure compliance. As you see with the underline, it is not their dedicated task to relieve everyone around them of the accessibility work. So ensuring compliance is more the highlighting problems, helping product leaders, for example, to prioritize the right things, but not to fix them for everyone else. This is still everyone's job, building digital products. And then beyond that, they're our absolutely main tool to discover new opportunities. So really putting the finger on, this is something where it can really make a difference, and we have to build this right from the very start. And I guess it's a nice mix being right after Sitor's talk. So one of the questions that we get as well, and I think most companies currently building digital products, sooner or later being asked, so what about AI? Can't you just like do most of that, accessibility? Can't we just like automate that or have some tools and be done with it? So let's do a little detour and talk about this topic. And we'll start with a little game. So I'll quickly explain the game before we jump back into menti.com. Who has played Two Truths and a Lie before? I hope it's not too traumatizing from some team buildings or previous experiences. So the idea is there are 3 statements. One of them is a lie or a false statement. So be careful later when you pick the false statement. It's very easy to just react to the first correct thing in the screen. Here's an example. We got the statement that the bicycle's inventor was born in Vienna. Then also I stated that the snow globe was invented in Vienna, and Vienna has over 450 gala dances every year. Anyone brave to give it a go? Maybe we have some locals that can, no? Oh, that's nice. Actually teaching random facts, yes? Yes? You didn't, it didn't happen here? Yeah, so maybe even a nice tip for everyone that needs to do some more sightseeing. And you're absolutely correct. The inventor Karl Dreis is actually from my hometown, Karlsruhe, and the other 2 are actually facts. And it's very impressive that you have 450 balls every year. So I guess you can dance twice a day if you want to. I love that. Okie doke. So get your phones ready. Now we'll actually do the thing. We're back on the design system track. There won't be any more tourism hints, and I think they can ask you if they need some recommendations. Okie doke. I'll just get this one started. Oh, this is nice. I've never had that many players participate. This is really cool to see. And I hope there's not a limit where it will just crash and we'll just sit there and never know what the quiz was. I'll give it a few more seconds. This is amazing. Okay, I'll slowly push the button. If someone is almost there, just panic now. I didn't even think there's so many people in the room. Hey, this is lovely. Okay, let's get started. And you do get a few more points if you're fast. But keep in mind, you want to select the lie, the thing that is wrong. Is it that AI provides perfect image description, so when you want to provide alt text for anyone struggling with vision? Can AI help with contrast checks, so having a good contrast between the text and its background color? And can AI make code reviews easier? You guys are fast. I barely got a sip in. So. Oh, it's even being a little bit theatralic and trying to be, yes, there we go. Very good. This is impressive. So, about 80–90% of you got it right, a bit less, but I'll just make up numbers now. This is great. So, yes, AI is maybe not the perfect tool right now to provide perfect image descriptions, but most of you were actually right that, yes, it can help greatly. You might already know plugins in Figma or on specific websites, helping with doing a quick contrast comparison and also spotting it in case you place actual text in front of photography. Airbnb has a tool that can actually highlight in Figma where you might run into issues. And then I think the most obvious one with code reviews, it can help a lot, especially based on other code that you have to identify issues for accessibility. So, to think a bit more about that, why would it be hard to use AI for alt text or describing images to anyone with vision issues or disabilities? You don't have to close the eyes, of course. I will not check and wait for everyone. But I want you to imagine this photography. The description is from an AI tool, and it says it's a man in front of a crowd. You got him? Got him visualized? So now let's be honest. Who of you got even close? Like, let's say, okay, nice. Were you actually just Googling Steve Jobs, or? Nice one. So, yes, as you can already guess, this is a very loaded image. I'm sure you had a lot of reactions. Maybe some of you actually watched this live. This is an image from Macworld 2008, Steve Jobs presenting, I think, what was the very first MacBook Air. So it was very exciting, right? Like, just a few centimeters, how's that going to work? So it's a very loaded image. And how would AI get this perfectly right? It needs to know the context. There might be a specific purpose in showing this image. And it might not even be the important part to mention that this is Steve Jobs. Maybe this is a blog article about turtlenecks and whether we should still wear them. So there's a lot of things where a human still has a better shot at creating really good alt text. On the other side, if you have a very structured language similar to automated translation or machine translation, something like technical or charts or infographics, if you have a good, well-trained AI, of course, you have a very good chance that she'll get it right. Or him, her. In German, it's female. So I really like this quote from an interview with Chancey Fleet, who's a blind tech educator working in a library, I think in New York. And she stated that in an interview for the Figma blog. And she said, accessibility tools have the power to make life easier and reduce friction, but you have to keep in mind that it can also foster new dependencies and introduce new limitations. So, if we go back to the question of how to design systems and accessibility really relate, right? Is it really just about assuring everything you build is accessible, or is there more? And there are a few really nice stats in a recent article talking about how design systems can help you make accessibility scale, which is usually the part that's very hard if you have a bigger company to reach everyone, educate everyone, police everyone. It gets very exhausting and frustrating. So in that interview, and I think it was a survey from the material team from Google, and they stated that nowadays, or in 2020, about 3% of what's on the internet is actually accessible. So we're talking about 97% not being fully accessible to our fellow humans. That kind of sucks. But they saw a 22% increase of in-house design systems. So they do this survey annually, and they found that the usage of design systems is increasing, like almost doubling compared to the previous year. And when they asked those design system leaders whether they think about accessibility, 47% of them stated that they at least include some kind of accessibility guidelines. The previous year, there was not even an accessibility-related question. They had it listed under others, and there it was about 8.4%, mixed with a whole other things. So there as well, a massive increase of awareness concerning that accessibility and design systems go together really well. So, I hope you got your phone still back out. I will keep doing this. I love that animation. We can just look at that for a while. That's looking good. Ah, it's getting more and more players. Okie doke. Did a few people sneak in, or was I too fast earlier? Okie doke, let's get going. Which one is the lie? Can accessible design system provide guidance on color contrast? Do they take care of custom component combinations? And or do they include component level focus states? I hope I didn't go too tacky on this one, but I felt a bit nerdy here. So we have guidance on color contrast, custom components, and component level focus states, so seeing where the keyboard is currently at. Nice, there we go. There's always these 5 seconds of doubt if the tool just died, and we'll just keep staring and waiting for the results. There we go, damn, you guys are good. So, you were absolutely correct, and I guess, I hope the trigger word was obvious enough, the custom. Right, let's help people with their custom needs and corner cases. And so yeah, this is the one where it gets really hard for us. But on the other side, we can help with guiding our users to use the right color combinations. And of course, we can make sure that all the components we build and provide actually have a proper focus state. Nice. So I told myself I'm going to simplify the slide, and then I never did. So apologies for the amount of text here, but the main part is really that the big question of, hey, if we make that design system fully accessible, everyone else can forget about it, right? Like if Chameleon is fully accessible, we'll invest it once, we audit everything, and then everyone else can just stop worrying. And I wish that was true. I wish I could just say, hey, we'll take care of it. You guys focus on like features and your roadmap, but sadly it's just not the fact, right? So there's a few examples, there are many more, but the general thing is we can help with all the things we provide. The values, the guidelines, the components themselves, we can make sure that everything we provide has a proper keyboard navigation pattern, has a proper screen reader experience, and of course we're going to test everything we build before we share it with our users. But when we talk on the entire product level, there's no way we can make sure that what they do when they combine our components will still be easy to navigate. We cannot make sure that when they put in a label, it will actually make sense to a screen reader user. And there's a few more things. So the moment they put together our components, they can still break the experience. So, but of course, we still want to at least get everything right on the design system level, right? And the faster, the better. Like, we want to make sure everything we provide and everything we're responsible for is fully accessible. So what's the quickest way to get there? There is no easy answer for this one as well. If you're starting from scratch, there's a really good chance that you can check all the boxes, you do everything right, especially if you have unlimited time, unlimited budget, and no one with interfering opinions on priority. But you have a good chance, right? Especially when you're well-educated and your team knows what it's doing. But usually most of us nowadays do not start from scratch. When do we ever really, really start from scratch? So sadly, most of the time, it looks a little bit more like this. Especially if you yourself build those things that you realized are not providing a great experience for all of your users. I don't know why I want to keep pushing the buttons on the MacBook. And I personally have made the experience that awareness of dealing with an inaccessible design system can feel like going through stages of grief. Does anyone feel the same? Got the wavy hand. I hope I'm not triggering any trauma. I saw there is a therapy session tomorrow happening, so we can also meet up there. But this is a little bit of what it felt for us. And not even specific to a design system, right? You always have that historic piece of code, that product they promised that will not go back to. And then suddenly, hey, how about we actually update this and rebuild it? So that is what we went through. And discussing with my team, it felt a little bit of, it's not what we felt building these things, it's the stages of awareness we went through. And I tried illustrating that. My team did not feel like a photo shooting and looking sad and doing those stock photography of like shock and overwhelm. So had to use my dog for those. Let's not call it the good old times, but maybe most of you remember there was a time when you had no idea and you just did like your cute little 10% transparency gray lines and super muted colors and overlays and gradients, and everything was not good, but kind of more peaceful, right? And then what we usually have is that awakening when either you have a hands-on experience with a user with disabilities trying to use your product, having a terrible experience. Maybe you get feedback through your sales or customer care team. Maybe you even have a colleague that shares with you like, hey, I'm colorblind, and that statistics you shared last week, absolutely unusable for me. So one of the designers said, like, we were retroing a little bit our accessibility audit that we did this past year. I was like, yeah, that felt like we were in a shock phase, realizing all these places where we could have done better and we should have done better. So pretty painful, all in all. So what comes after that is usually the best part, is when you start educating yourself and you get those simple checklists. And you're like, oh, wow, I'll just go through those 52 requirements, I'll fix it all. Ta-da, we'll be fully accessible and provide a perfectly inclusive user experience. We call it when like you have that hero feeling, and you might have either experienced it yourself or in colleagues that just discovered accessibility and have a bit of a overdoing in general. And we're talking to the product owner of one of our products, and they were like, yeah, we started actually auditing our product, and the content and color, that it wasn't that bad. But then the interesting stuff happened when we tried keyboard navigation or screen readers. And you know what he meant by interesting. It's terrible. So after you have all this motivation, and you're like, okay, we'll do this, we'll be great, we'll do right by our users, it can get a little bit overwhelming. And that's also what one of our engineers was saying, is like, I want to do right, I really want to do right, but I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. I have all those checklists. I know what is wrong, or at least I know what is wrong in terms of the user experience. But in general, the accessibility for me currently feels very overwhelming. And then you end up at the fully inclusive design system, right? So this is where my talk ends. Hope you had a good time. Thanks for, there's a little gap there, right? I don't know. This is pretty much where we found ourselves the moment we had like a really fully funded team and really took ownership of all these things that we collected from other teams that we took over and started making it a system and not just a collection of things. And no matter how many checklists we went through and trainings, it always felt like there's a bit of this spot where a lot of the online resources make it sound like, oh, just follow these simple lists, and then you'll be good, and make sure to add it to your process. And I think that's just part of the truth. So I would love to hear about where you currently find yourself. So I guess it's pretty anonymous, don't be shy. And then maybe together we can decide if you need therapy, or maybe you can just come on stage and take over. I love that the everything is awesome is the one that gets the happy color, and everything else is just shades of gray. This is not something I decided on, but it's a good fit. Seems like we're pretty balanced at this point, even though when new votes are coming in, it's just doing a little flashy motion. So what do we have here? The biggest part is motivated. That is so good to hear. I hope you brought your little cape. But it's very good to hear that most of you are either motivated or awakening. But as we see, almost as much as those that are like currently realizing are already feeling overwhelmed. So we're looking at almost 50% of you being like, this is not as easy as they made it look. So I guess we do share this experience, and it's not just my team. There we go. So as promised, and this will be very simplified, right? I'm not going to start looking at the code together and showing you our Figma files, but I do want to share some sources of grief for us, which in the end provided most of the learning and really informed how we approach accessibility on the design system level nowadays. So one of our first experiences was why would you do that? We did all the documentation. It was so obvious. It was so clear. So what you see here is a screenshot from our color library. So if they browse our documentation, they can see all the colors we offer. And there are like the design tokens for yellow. And I mean, that should be very clear, right? It says AA, AAA, you can use black on this yellow. And then there's this little white bar. We thought this was absolutely clear, self-explanatory. Our users, on the other hand, and I have to say, on this screen, it reads really well. On my screen, you cannot read this at all, so it's a really good contrast. Maybe it's just my screen. But yeah, we were reviewing a few designs with our branding and marketing teams, and we realized that when we rebranded to GoTo and introduced the new branding, we did not really spell it out that you should not be using white on yellow. It's like the readability and legibility is really not okay. I'm really shocked this is so readable, so maybe. But it's also not the actual yellow that you would see on my screen. So this is, for us, was a fantastic educational opportunity, and we ended up with a new accessibility champion in our branding team. So we caught this before it got live, and it was really great to show them how this would look on different screens, educate them about, even though if it looks good on your screen, it might look shitty on another screen. Really good one, really unexpected for us. So I did mention labeling, right? Another one where we thought, hey, this is obvious, right? We provide a button component, which I guess is the core component of any design system. And we made sure, hey, you have to put an ARIA label and put a little placeholder there. It's like, yeah, just make sure you put a meaningful label. We had an accessibility awareness month, where in the end we asked all of the teams, hey, spend half an hour, use your product or your part of the product with a keyboard or a screen reader. We gave them a little bit of training. And one of the product owners came back and he was like, hey, I looked at our part of the product and I tabbed through it with a screen reader and it was just button, 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 button. So what was the problem? We did all the things we could, but we cannot police 50+ engineering teams, right? So we kind of have to trust ourselves, it's obvious. The thing is, it might have been obvious, but no one really felt responsible or had it on their checklist to take care of the ARIA label or the alt text. Should that be the designer? Should that be the content designer, which is a thing at our company? Is that one of the engineers? Is it when they talk to localization? And then who's going to localize it? And then QA might have just been like, what is this? So again, for us, a really good opportunity that even if you document it really well, if there is no specific responsibility attached to it, it might still not work out the way you intended it to do. One of the other repeated scenarios we ran into was, worked fine on our end. We have multiple stages in our team where we test after initial design, when we implemented it, and before it goes live, or we share it with our users. So we built this nav drawer, so the white grayish part next to the navigation rail. So hey, we'll make sure they can put anything they need in there. It's one of the most common parts of our products. And we'll promise them, hey, whatever you need, is this a settings page? Does it have any custom components? You can put it in, should be fine. It was not fine. You will never know what are all the corner cases and use cases, especially if someone has to really quickly prototype and try something new. The amount of component combinations we realized are possible and make sense for our users was astounding. And of course, they came back to us saying, like, hey, you said we could put anything in there. And then we were faced with, okay, navigation was a bit all over the place. Screen reader experience didn't work. So we had to go back and not just make sure that the container itself works, but also add the guidelines and rules and explain how to make it or fill it in a way that it will still be accessible and easy to navigate. And I guess the easiest one to fall into, the easiest trap to fall into is no, that should be simple. That's straightforward. Like, how could, we will not mess this one up. So, as you might know, there's a lot of elements that have a trigger and then open, for example, a pop-up. So, this is the case for us for many components. And obviously, on the code side of things, they have to talk to each other. You have the trigger, it opens something, and you want to automatically move the focus into the, for example, popover, right? You want to automatically focus the first interactive element, for example, the first list item. We had months of our engineers, one spike after the other, figuring out why it was not working. The focus would not end up in the popover, and in the end, we had to build a new version of the popover. There were so many layers of tap-dap, different engineers, different teams. You know all these things, what happens, historic code no one wants to touch. At some point, we said, okay, we'll stop trying to fix it. We will stop trying to fix all those other bugs. I will just build a new one. So, tell me, how did you mess up yourself. You can select multiple, so if you did the whole thing, let us know, and love to hear what's like the most common one. And of course, I could not add all the possible ones, so other, of course, is okay to choose as well. Oh, that's pretty balanced. Can we get it to 42, just for the nerds? Nice. I guess the good news is messing up with color contrast, it's one of the easiest ones to fix, right? Whether you're on hard-coded colors or design tokens, this is one where you can really go in, create the guidelines, educate people, and be like, hey, this is how we can fix that. Responsiveness, on the other hand, I get that, right? We all want to, at least maybe a few years ago, right? We'd love to say, hey, we're all mobile first. Who of the designers in this room actually really designs mobile first for products that are mostly used on browsers? Okay, how many designers are in the room? Just to be sure. Okay. Thank you, thank you. Now, it's just like, hey, let's give us the, I see. Okay, so yes, we can totally relate to that. When you know most of your users are going to use it in the browser, you tend to just not be mobile first. So you have to be very aware on, even though you're not talking smartphones, let's make sure to be aware of the screen sizes, resolutions, maybe someone using the screen vertically, etc., and educate ourselves and just keep it in mind when we review or critique our design. And then keyboard navigation and screen reader support, as I mentioned, also for us, where we had to learn and improve the most. And image description is, I guess, just the one where the responsibilities seem to, or tend to be, pretty unclear as well. There we go. So how did we prevent such issues going forward? And I'd like to pick your brain on this one as well. So, oh no, did we overdo it? Let's give it a bit of a chance. I hope we didn't break it. Oh, there we go. I see improvement. Yes. Oh, I love the burger. Hope no one's hungry. I think we're about 120 before, so I'll give it a few more seconds. Let's go. So again, spot the false statement. Which one is not correct? How did we prevent those issues going forward? We added an acceptance criteria in all our JIRA tickets saying, make it accessible. We improved outcomes by documenting expected behavior in more detail, and/or we reduced mistakes by modeling collaborative behavior. I know all the secret product manager and product owners will show their face and go like, yeah, Jira. And then we have documentation. But I had a few examples how that didn't help us, right? And then modeling collaborative behavior, is that just blaming the others, or who knows? So, got a few people being undecided. 20 seconds left. or someone just put their phone back down. It's like, oh, you're going to wait for this countdown to go to 0. Okay, so this one was not as obvious. I wish it would be enough to make it an acceptance criteria, right? I really wish, and we'll talk about this in the next slide. But what actually helped us are going even into more detail, right? Not just stating, hey, don't do this, but having extensive documentation on how to build an accessible experience and how to audit our products. And I think that was one of my hardest learning. I came to being a product manager not by education or by choice, so to say. It was just the right thing at that moment. But I came from the background of being a UX researcher and a product designer. So my first experience with Jira was like, oh, wow, just put in a few acceptance criteria. Whoever's going to pick that ticket, they'll just check all those boxes. It will be fine. Yeah, it wasn't. So what do we do instead? What's the right ingredient? So of course we do use Jira acceptance criteria, but nowadays they are tailor-made for every ticket. There's no copy and paste. We have to sit down and we really have to talk through with the team. What are the things for this specific component? Let's say a button, right? We have to talk about the labeling and the guidance on how to write the label. We have to talk about focus, combining button groups, which are common templates or page designs that might have a button. We have to spell it all out, both in our ticket and in the actual documentation. And it has to be simple. Who in this room has opened the WCAG accessibility website and just, oh, I saw the hands going up before. Okay, and panicked. It's a bit overwhelming, right? And then it's not just this little part. You click on links and it just keeps going, and it's pages of pages on how to test for it, how to assure you're checking. You have to find a way to simplify it for your users and fellow designers and engineers. And usually you simplify it by putting it in context. So when you talk about form design or settings design, you highlight which WCAG criteria apply. You explain to designers how they can conform. And then with engineers, you make sure they know how to test for them in this specific context. So there you can help them to focus only on the relevant criteria, but then also have examples, for example, from other parts of the product to apply that knowledge. So that also aligns with being specific. It does not help to have examples from other products when yours is too custom or just too different to the examples. And then the big piece really is the education, which in our case, we use that Grassroots Accessibility Champions program through, is not just educating our colleagues, but also actually listening to our users, but also to their users, right? We really have to understand, how do users with disabilities use our products? How does that impact how we build those products? And then how can we teach our product teams to do right? One thing we also had to learn the hard way is like, make sure you don't underestimate attrition, new hires. You have to be repetitive and you have to be fine with it. There's no, oh, I'll just put like this onboarding video in our standard process and it should be fine, right? You really have to reach out and make sure they get a tailor-made onboarding depending on their job and their responsibilities. And then the thing that I think is not specific to accessibility, but in general for design systems, you have to make sure that there's a shared sense of ownership. Not only your full-time team, but also your users have to really care about building fully accessible and inclusive designs using the design system. And as I kept, I guess, mentioning is, you have to be really, really okay with repetition. It is not a one fix only. It is not, I do this one workshop, I record this one session for everyone to join. You have to be really, really comfortable to audit regularly, because you update a component and something broke, that was fine before because you did an audit. Always be ready to just check it in again, review at all the stages, be it the research stage, design, content design, engineering, QA, and be patient. We want to be the little corgi and my senior Labrador with the floating capes and save the world, but you have to also save yourself, right? If you try to do it all and be the fastest and the best, I think that's a very easy path to burnout. You have to be very aware how to prioritize based on impact and make sure that you focus on what makes or breaks the experience for your users. So, 3 things that I feel are very helpful and maybe even critical to keep in mind and that are not in the checklist. First one, be resilient. It's the main topic that comes up in our team retros is the repetition, uneducated colleagues, unexpected use cases, a custom component that came out of nowhere. It is so very important to focus on what makes us a good UX professional, is the empathy. Try and be patient, resilient, and empathetic, and not make anyone feel bad when they messed up, right? You want them to come to you and learn. So the resilience piece for us is really what makes our team enjoy their job, even though a lot of it is not very joyful work, right? Documenting, educating, correcting mistakes. Another one that seems counterintuitive, as most of us, I guess, have like this hidden inner perfectionist that want to do everything perfect. But if you want to do everything perfect, you might end up with a design system that has 0 adoption. So you have to kind of balance building a good, solid, high-quality product that gets adopted and actually solves your user and your customer needs. So in our case, we did have to embrace moving fast. We could not sit there for 3 months and troubleshoot a broken component, right? You have to make those decisions. When do we move to building a new version? When do we have to take a step back? When do we have to block a deployment versus when do we actually can go forward and do things in small increments because they might end up being annoying, but they might not break or prevent the user experience from happening. And then I think I did mention that a few times now, but it's good to keep in mind pretty much everything when it is an educational opportunity. Your priority must be that no one feels bad or like they messed up or like they don't care about the users, because I would dare say that everyone here in this room wants to build a great product, a great design, a great experience, and most people don't mess up on purpose, right? So the important thing is to be approachable, to make everyone feel like we can go to this team, they take care of our design system, I can ask them about anything, and I will not feel incompetent. So for us, we really try, and again, that is really rooted in us doing a lot of retros. It is really important to have this safe space where we can vent, where they can be frustrated about, oh, we just explained this, we just did a workshop, we just sent out 20 Slack messages. People will still miss the message, they miss the workshop, they get interrupted, do something else. It's usually not on purpose if they messed up or missed information. So usually it's a lot of work, and it's not easy, but to always be welcoming and then figure out how can we learn from it, but also how can they learn from it to not repeat a mistake. So, almost at the end of our session, and I was wondering who did best in the quizzes. So if you remember, oh, it's nice, you all put names. When I tested with my team, they were like, I'm the pumpkin, and I'm the little corgi with the cape. So it's nice you actually put your names. So it seems like Vroom, I love that. That kid is one of our engineers, did the most points. Does someone want to wave and have the center of attention for a second? Or too shy? Who's Vroom? Come on. Left the room to grab coffee? Nice. So, but generally, pretty many people scored really high. So one of them is you. Take your screenshot now. And I have a little bonus. It felt nice to say 3 things. Let's sneak in a 4th one. Be an attractive employer, right? The ideal situation is that you do not build for someone else's experience. Ideally, you do attract colleagues that have disabilities. So, and how do you do that? You don't want to go around and have like job advertisements phrased that way. So be an attractive employer and make sure your company is an accessible and inclusive workplace and attracts diverse group of people. And I'm super proud that this year we scored super high in the Disability Equality Index. So they told us, hey, we're actually doing a good job being an accessible workplace. And that's about it. So I hope you had a good time. Most of you still look awake, so thanks so much for bearing with me that time of the day. So let's see if it does as good as the Slido. So theoretically, you can also send questions here, but I'm also happy. I think we have a few more minutes. 4. Okay, seems like we... I do see Slido on that screen now, so I'll just reply to the question there. Someone asked, why should we use GoTo over the many other video call and conferencing tools? Oh, I love that you trust me to be a good sales agent. This is a good one. Yes, there are many video call and conferencing tools. I think what puts GoTo apart is that we have a very consistent, very focused team. We prioritize accessibility, we prioritize collaboration, and also embedding it in an inclusive and wide range of products. So you can have the separate meeting tool, but you can also have the combined one that comes with phone, messaging, etc. But I'm really not a good salesperson, so I would recommend you just jump on goto.com and let them do their job. Can we have a look at the design system? It is currently internal, but I'm happy to give a little walkthrough if you want to grab me later. Tools to use, check accessibility. It really depends on the position. On the design side, we have a few integrations in Figma. I think the most impressive one is Stark. It's a company focused on accessibility and helping you build accessible products, so I can really recommend Stark. And on the engineering side, there's a few that are easy to find, like X and Lighthouse. So in the browser, you can do some very easy accessibility checks, but most of it is us being educated and going through everything we build. What's our method and frequency for evaluating what needs fixing and optimization? So I feel that's 2 questions in one. The method, in general, is we try to be very specific in terms of rating any issue in terms of impact. We have a rating scale where the lowest one is, that's a nice to have. Let's say a skip link for navigation. That's a nice to have, especially if I have a lot of navigation, but it's not going to break the experience. It might, worst case, it might be a bit annoying. And then we have the level where it gets frustrating. You can still use the product, but they're not going to enjoy it. And then, of course, the worst kind of issues is fully blocked. Let's say they get trapped in a dialogue, you can't get out, that meeting is over. So we usually don't separate accessibility or other tech debt. Anything is rated in terms of impact, effort, and urgency, and then we have a combined list in our backlog. So now I also see a few questions. Now I see Slido, and on the other screen I see the many questions. one more from Slido. Do you have a preference? The top one. How do you sell accessibility? Oh, yes. How do you sell accessibility to product managers and owners with a cramped backlog? That's the big one. It would be nice and easy if we could just say it's the right thing to do, right? We're just like, okay, that's it. Everyone agrees. We go back to. No. What we have to do is a combination of things. And we do approach it from a business and sales point of view. We start with a general education of how many people benefit, that it does not only directly relate to users with disability, that it scales to users that might not have a disability or not a severe one, but also that a company might just have one colleague that, let's say, is fully blind, but the company will still want to buy a tool or tools that everyone can use, right? So looking at just the numbers usually is not helpful. It's really painting a picture of, let's say, a video conferencing tool, right? Why should that not have a lot of users with disabilities? So that's how we sell on the, let's say, in the empathetic level, but also show the numbers. And we work very close with our sales and customer care. And at this point, we can highlight companies that didn't buy, companies that did ask for an accessibility statement, and then also share those stories where we could sell a product because we could guarantee it's fully accessible and usable. So it's collecting those stories, teaming up with sales, customer support, and putting everything together. So I would not rely on one of those. And additionally, it also depends on what is the product manager's or owner's preferences, what does the backlog look like. It's really a tailor-made approach. And then as you progress, of course, you want to combine that with pressure from the individual contributors, and of course, buy-in and support from your high-level leadership. So it's like different stages, and you keep adding to it until you have a package that becomes very attractive, even for a stressed-out product manager.
Thanks so much, Wendy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy, for such a thorough and honest, insight in how things work in reality and what you can do to, get to those accessible design systems.